hi. Live.
Hello.
Inside show of how to make ChatGPT work for you. We're going to introduce you to tools such as ChatGPT versions 3 and 4. Not to mention paraphrasing, so Quillbot, which is the AI rinter, which is I'm not saying that is a useful thing for academics to use, but it might well be.
Okay.
And there's such paraphrasing out there.
Just write that down.
There's already guidelines out there for using or for using ChatGPT as an author in your paper.
Yeah, and marking. So like I did a bit of marking.
What the prompt is, yeah.
Yeah, and you have to like test it in turn it in. So
yes.
there's a whole bunch of students now getting caught by that. Nightmare.
What's fascinating? Go ahead.
That's where the instance is. Don't get caught. Sorry, that's not the attitude. Don't you? Well, no. I think it's great that we've got tools like this to use, and I strongly encourage everybody to use them. But it's abusing them.
Yeah, if you get it to write your whole paper, then maybe not. But
okay, this might be a good question for you, because I listened to both of your fantastic chat about AI and healthcare. But so when it comes to, you're, I guess, my resident AI expert. When it comes to prompt drift and citing that stuff in academic articles and all that stuff, how do you? Because you can't necessarily replicate that same result if that even if the same person with the same seed put it in and the model has changed over time, presumably you wouldn't get the same result. Everyone's saying prompt GPT or chat GPT is getting dumber. How does this work?
Not 100% sure, if I'm honest. You say AI expert, I'm a very high level AI expert. I wouldn't even say expert, but that's the problem, I think. It's the main issue we're going to have is how it changes and how it adapts. Everybody thinks it's going to be perfect. And that's something that I literally I'm trying to tell people. I have arguments with people all the time and they're like, AI, it's going to change everything. And I'm like, no, my dear, it's not. It's not. But I'm not fully, I have never done computer science in my life, ever.
I think it's one of these things, though, is you. Yes, I think if I've seen a couple of papers done now where they've referenced ChatGPT as an author, and I think that's on the one hand fair, but I think you're right. Almost having that simplicity of saying, yeah, ChatGPT did this implies that ChatGPT doesn't change, or large language models or generative AI doesn't change. When it does, that's kind of the point. And I think it's for me. We go through the dumber phase because you always do when you're learning something new. You start off, you learn a little bit of it, and you go, "Christ, I'm the expert. I know everything about this now." Then you get a little bit further, and you go, "Oh, actually, I don't know much anyway." Oh, in fact, then you realise that you're really dumb. But then you sort of crawl back up, and you actually get to know the full length and breadth of what you're doing. You become clever again. And I think that's possibly where ChatGPT is, just because the volume of data it's been exposed to so much. And the amount of people who are just actually inputting it to try and literally just try to trip it up or get it to talk porn. One of the two. I still stand by, though. I think I've written about this a couple of times now. I think it's brilliant for being able to sit there and get that to stop that initial white page being clean and being able to help you get some ideas on paper and getting something to write around. So.
Aye. It's good for Google as well. So there's a lot of stuff that I write sometimes, and it's quite easy stuff, but it does take quite a long time to look through all the stuff on Google. So I'm like, what is this? And it tells me, and I find that really useful for that. But yeah, it doesn't. It's still only 2021, isn't it? The data set, I believe.
Yes, there's some extensions on it that will. No, in fact, no. They've switched the Bing extension off now, haven't they? It had some issues with it, so. But I don't care. It's still cool.
It's cool.
I just keep. In some cases, I keep forgetting its usefulness. We were just talking in the pre-show how I'd been able to use it to do some data analysis much quicker than I thought I was going to need to. So that was quite cool.
I kind of forgotten about it actually, so I might start using it again. Yay!
It's interesting because there were a lot of ways in which I incorporated GPT-3, GPT-4 into our existing workflows for content generation, podcast production. It's all passive. Like, you can probably tell, Kate, from some of the show notes where that passive stuff comes in as like a blanket, just put something in there for a placeholder so we can, fix it later. But it's really fascinating with like how much I forget that it's just there. And like, I used to go to it all the time for stuff. No longer go to it all the time for stuff. The newness, the shiny newness of the new toy has worn off. But it's also like, I have so many thoughts right now. The one thought I brought up, how it's getting dumber. It's like, people keep saying, AI is the worst right now that it ever will be, and it'll only get better. And if it's like, if we are having this prompt drift and the responses are getting trained on bad data, then it will get worse. But how do we fix that? And that's a larger issue based on the model. But what's interesting is that, like, I don't think that's the reason that I stopped using it. I think that the reason that I stopped using it so much is that newness wore off. I mean, it's still something that I will come to and like throw in something every now and then, but knowing more about it almost makes me hesitant to use it more. Like, I don't know. It's not that I don't think it's good. It's just good for certain types of things and not other types of things. Like, I've tried using it in data analysis, Barry, and for me, like, getting the prompts just right, it has to be just right.
Yeah.
And spending that time, it's like, well, I could just do this manually and, in less time than it would be to perfect the prompt, but then you're missing out on that combined benefits over time.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you're using it for as well. I mean, the example I was using was, done some long interview transcripts, and I just needed an initial rough overview of what the main themes that had come out. And for that, it was great. But I still then had to spend the rest of the day going through them themes and, almost rinsing them to make them make sense. And be applicable to the question. But I still think it shaved probably a couple of days worth of effort of doing that initial, because when you do transcript review, you have to sit there and, oh well, who was speaking there? All the just the nauseating. What does that spelling mean, and all that sort of stuff. So it gets rid of a load of that. Yes, you still have to read it just to make sure you haven't lost anything. But then that's why I always try and keep notes when I'm doing the interviews anyway, just to make sure I what the big hitters are. But yeah, I still think it probably, if it saves me like maybe a day or day and a half per transcript that I wanted to do, it saved me a week's worth of effort this week. So happy days. I'm down with that.
Interesting question from the chat here. Are there required disclosures for use of ChatGPT or similar AI for publication?
Yeah, I think so.
Are they required?
I did see something, but it was a long time ago about it, that a certain journal said they wanted it disclosed if you'd used it for your, say, analysis or even your transcription. Because I think they now want you to tell them if you've used Teams for transcribing.
Really?
Well, yeah, which, again, the best lifesaver ever. But I don't know. I think certain journals, maybe.
Not the journals I write for.
No.
Which is
Well,
none.
I think it would largely, yeah. I mean, for authorship though, that's the interesting thing to me, because you can write up this is basically our methods. Turn this into a methods section and then have it write that up. But every method section looks the same. Like, how would somebody be able to tell that I wrote that? Or let me take a past publication that I've wrote and self-plagiarize by saying, use this format. Here are how the methods differ for this time around. Just write it up. Change a word or two. I think there was actually, as we're talking about this, I know it has nothing to do with the story tonight, but it's so fascinating. There's actually a lawsuit that just passed that said you don't need to attribute.
Yeah, I saw that.
You don't need to attribute authorship to, or you can't. You can't copyright generative AI because there's no human. Input to it.
Copyright can only be assigned to a living person.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that.
But that's still whether the academic, there's I think again there's nuances, isn't there, between what tools are you using to do the work, and are you getting the tools to come up with your original thought, or are you using them to structure your whatever it is you're doing in order to explain things better? Because you could argue that, do you declare using a word processor or a typewriter over Word? The use of autocorrect has massively improved the legibility of what I do.
And Grammarly as well. Grammarly.
Oh,
that
yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Love Grammarly.
Let me pose something to you. So this is where it gets a little confusing for me. So a work of art created by AI without any human input cannot be copyrighted under U.S. law. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Without any human input.
Somebody must have wrote the prompt.
Yeah.
That's what
I'm saying. And someone must have taken it and put it somewhere.
AI itself is created by human input.
Yeah.
As well. So I just don't understand those words and how they can this is more like probably a legal question, but how can you come up with those 4 words without any human input and say, obviously that can be cut and dry, but there's not, I can't see a scenario, and maybe this is my limited knowledge on AI. I can't see a scenario where there wouldn't be human input of even in the extreme cases of defining a high level goal for machine learning an AI system to do, and you would still get that goal would be the human input. I'm designing this system to do X, Y, and Z. Would that be the human input in that situation? I don't know. I just don't know.
It depends whether it's gone past that. Has the AI gone past what it was initially developed to be? Oh god, this is getting you're talking general artificial intelligence rather than this narrow stuff that we've got right now. Right. It was designed and then it's gone past what it was designed to do. Would that count?
If the AI, I think you're right, I think we are talking AGI rather than just AI, but if the AI produced a picture to explain what it was trying to do rather than a narrative, but even though it wasn't necessarily asked to produce a picture, that would be that. If it chose to express itself in a different way, regardless of goal, regardless of the prompt.
So specifically, this is talking about artwork. So that's the other thing, is that this case is limited to artwork. I'm reading more on it.
They've got the whole, how about if someone has asked a person to paint a picture, are they part of the... Did they paint it? Is it theirs as well? If some royal person's actually, can you come and paint a picture of me? And then the painter paints it. Was that painted by the person who asked for it?
that's a so it's a prompt, effectively a commission.
Yeah.
Um,
Rather than they did the painting.
We need to talk about Twitter because my head's going to blow up.
All right. So that's the topic tonight. We're going to the Twitter X, whatever you want to call it, that thing that now Elon Musk owns. And really, we're not going to dive into the shit show that is Twitter. I stole your line, Barry. But
I've had to change it now.
We're not. Look, the piece that we're focusing on tonight is the trust aspect and what it actually is doing, eroding that trust from like a end user perspective, and how all this, how trust is a finite resource within human factors and UX. So that's the story for tonight.
Excellent.
I can't wait.
I can't.
Basically, we're going to spend best part of an hour rinsing Elon Musk for ruining what was an amazing. I'm not going to say it was an amazing, but it's certainly a pioneering platform, the likes we haven't seen before, and now we probably won't see again because Threads is rubbish.
I see. I've not even signed up for Threads.
I have, and I give it a go, but just the simple thing of not being a proper timeline, they just throw random stuff at you. If you're trying to follow a story, so I use Twitter for news. Obviously, something happens, so then you see it come on Twitter, so then you scroll back, don't you? In terms of who's the first reporting, da 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 da. You can't really do that on Threads, or you couldn't. I don't know whether they've changed it because I haven't used it in weeks. But there was nothing new, cool, and sexy about it. It was just Twitter under a different name.
Well, I was thinking, I went to like sign up because I was like, oh, this person's using Threads. And then it was like, download this app. And I thought it was part of Instagram. I thought it was just like an extra like layer of Instagram. And I was like, I'm not downloading another app. No.
Yeah, because it uses because this is where they cheated. And it was a clever cheat. So we're rinsing Threads before that's fine. So they turned around and boasted that they'd had more signups than any other social media, and certainly more than Twitter ever had in a short period of time. And that's because they cheated. They turned around and said, right, everybody on Instagram, you've now got access to Threads. Well done. Congratulations. Sign up now. And you have to use your Instagram login, and therefore you're already a user. That's how they cheated. Because they then also more recently had the quickest exodus as well. I think loads of people are now just saying it's rubbish, run away, head for the hills.
I'm glad you didn't sign up for it then. Or I already have, sorry. I mean, I didn't download the app.
What I do like about it, even though I'm not really using it properly or at all, is it's certainly a nicer place than Twitter at the moment. But I don't think that takes that much doing. Because I think everybody's trying to run away from everybody sort of wants to run away from Twitter, but nobody really is. Everybody's threatening to. They're going to like Threads or Mastodon. I don't know if anybody tried Mastodon.
Yes, I have.
I stepped my foot in the door and then took my foot back out the door and let it slam behind me because I thought it was rubbish. It was even worse than Threads. I'd rather have Threads.
Oh God. I just feel like I spent too long making my Twitter like what I wanted it to be to start again.
And now it just looks like a porn site.
I know.
When you look at your app, just the thing, it's just got X with.
What is
it's
it?
not even now. It's now they've even changed the logo. I thought my screen was cracked.
Yes,
because it's got the strange funny thing behind it, and so now it not only just does it look like a bit of some sort of porn dating app thing, but now it looks like a seedy porn dating app thing because it hasn't even got a proper black background. It's slightly off grey in a dirty manner.
And it just reminds me a lot of like the 2010s, and I used to paint my nails so it looked like that. Like, you used to get this nail polish, so this is really off topic. You used to get this nail polish that you painted on top of your nail polish, and it used to crack like that.
See, my eldest daughter is in her spare time, because she has lots of that whilst being at university and working for us. He's been a nail tech, and so now half our living room is taken up in. Well, he doesn't at the moment. It's in the back of my car because I'm taking him back to university in the morning. But yes, Eloise. So we in the new offices that we moved into, she wanted a spare room, so she could actually run her little nail tech empire. And I'm like, but no,
Yes.
we've the offices are full. But
That's amazing. I love getting my nails done, so I would come.
But you don't know. You didn't visit.
I'm sorry. It wasn't my fault. It was. I was in the north of Wales. Okay, it's a far distance.
Fair.
I can blame Harry for that. Who is listening? So it's Harry's fault. Blame him.
You've got a partner who listens to your output.
I'm not quite sure. He was like, "Your mic's wrong," and I'm like, "Okay." Sorry.
Sounds fine on our end.
Oh, good. Well, he said it was a bit weird, so I changed it, and now apparently it's okay.
Oh, good. Fair enough.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the audio quality control check.
It's probably gone now.
I was with all our trash talking on Twitter. I thought maybe they would censor us, but no, we're still in there. It's still there. Okay. We're still streaming on that platform, so I guess there's that.
Just wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, he says you're welcome.
I just realised I haven't really seen it came from yet. I need to.
Oh shoot! Yeah. Whoops.
Oh, look, Kate's been all Swattish and coming. She's done all of her notes and everything.
You know what?
I just I did it in front of the TV, so you know.
We run a tight ship over here, folks. This is.
I do. You don't.
Busted.
I was watching a lovely Netflix documentary about drug scandals and writing up my notes. So,
well done. I've managed to get myself back into Peaky Blinders to carry on, because that's when you get so far through like a series, then you realise there's like multiple series, and you get about halfway through all of the series, and you're just like, I'm just losing the will to live. I started to go to that point, and then I sort of gone back into it. So when I was flagging this afternoon, because now we've got the TV in the big room. I've hooked up Netflix to it, and we've got a comfy sofa. Yeah,
that's amazing. That sounds good. My one's Mad Men. I'm trying really hard. I didn't finish it the first time I watched it, and I'm trying really hard to finish it this time. And those later seasons look great, which you wouldn't understand if you hadn't seen.
So, what's the premise?
It's an advertising agency in New York in the 60s.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, it's good. Like the first 4 seasons, fantastic. Later ones, not so much. Bit of a struggle. See, you guys are all quiet trying to.
Yeah, thank you for carrying us right now.
What else can I talk about? It's all about me now. I went to the dentist this afternoon and I got my teeth cleaned, and it cost me £65.
Don't like that. Our dentist keeps on having a go at us because they keep on cancelling my appointment. So both mine and his appointments. So they have a go at us for not going. Not having been in a year, and well, that's because you keep cancelling my appointment. And now I'm fairly sure I've got one in the middle of next month, because we've they won't do that, but they want me to spend somewhere in the region of £1,200 to £1,500 on my teeth to get, because I had a root canal, and now they're saying I need to crown it, and I'm like, that sounds really expensive. Oh, it's about £1,000, but then obviously you'll have your, and I'm like. So what happens if I don't do this? Oh, the tooth will disintegrate.
Yeah, all right.
I'm not seeing that as necessarily a bad thing at this point. I can chew on the other side of my mouth.
Yeah.
I was like, but if I get this crown, then will that mean I can then? Because obviously, because I've got a root canal, you're not meant to like do proper crunchy things on that side of my mouth. So does that mean if I get this, then I'll be able to do that? And like, oh no, you've got to look after it. And so I'm not in any worse position than I'm. Now, except about £1,500 lighter, £1,500 that I don't have, because I want to buy other things.
That's brutal.
Yeah, I don't like dentists.
No, well, my problem is it's a private/NHS dentist, and I'm on the NHS side. I sits with a hygienist who's like, we only perform private procedures, and I'm like, So I can't get my cheapy £30 10-minute cleaning because you don't offer that, even though I'm an NHS patient. Oh, so annoying. I tried to argue it, but they wouldn't have it.
Yeah.
Not happy. What else can I talk about? What you guys do?
I'm just gonna wing it. That's
fine. You guys can wing it.
That's how things go here when when you forgot to do the thing. Well, hey, I do have like a little a nice I don't know if it's nice. I have a stupid thing I did. I don't know if I'm cleared to say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I don't know if this is cleared to go on the air. So everyone watching, what?
Who's supposed to have cleared this before you?
Thanks for the plug, Barry. So we have another podcast called Safe and Effective.
I see where you're going. I was just trying to work out whether you're going to get into trouble with Mrs. Roome or not.
No.
I'm trying to do the bloke thing in trying to protect.
No, I don't know if this is cleared. Like, I'm not sure. So it's no secret that there's another podcast on the network called Safe and Effective. Okay, now, so there was a joke. There's the story behind this is that there's a segment that's going to be called Let's Get Real. Okay. That talks about the hard truths about certain things in industry. And as this very serious, real talk between Heidi and friend of the show, I'm not going to say who it is, but you'll have to tune into episode 5 for that. It was a very serious talk, and I was like, oh, we could just, like, let's get real. Let's get physical. And I was just listening to that, like the Office episode where they're like doing about the sexual harassment and they're singing to it. Anyway, so I went off and did a thing with my poor vocals here. So enjoy this.
Real.
Oh, God.
What is that?
I'm sorry, what?
Dude, that was. I'm not sure.
I'm kind of scared. I mean, it's amazing, but I'm kind of scared of it.
Some additional context is that I was up till like 4 a.m. the night before, so I was like dealing with some really bad insomnia, and I was kind of loopy that morning. So that's the full story. That's not going to be a regular returning segment on here. I just wanted to share that with you all.
It's great.
That doesn't come across at all.
I think it should become normal. I want to hear it all the time. You should put it on Spotify.
Well, I don't want to get copyright strike. I'm pretty sure I can do that much because it was like, what, 10 seconds or something? Not even that. It was how long is that?
Copyright. Well, overall, you have to be. It's less than 30 seconds to get strikes.
Yeah, and that was definitely less than 30 seconds. So I don't want to hear it YouTube or Twitch or any other platform that is gonna strike me on that because that was 6 seconds long.
Oh, perfect. You're fine then.
Showtime? Are we all ready?
Just the noisiest water bottle ever.
We in a chipper mood after that one?
Oh, very.
Okay.
You've raised our whatever needed raising.
Spirits?
That's the one. We'll go with
That's
spirits.
the word.
I hope we're talking about spirits here.
Well,
We already got trouble with innuendo before we came on here.
All right. Well, speaking of spirits, I'm gonna take a sip of this, and we'll be.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Human Factors Cast. I can't believe tomorrow is September. By the time you're listening to this, it's probably September. It's we're recording this live on August 31st, 2023. Like I said, this is Human Factors Cast. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined today by Mr. Barry Kirby.
Hello.
And Kate Preston is back to join us since we didn't scare her away last time.
Hello, it's good to be back.
Good to have you, Kate. We got a fantastic show for you all lined up tonight. We're going to be diving into Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and how trust is a finite resource in human factors. Plus, we'll be tracking down some burning questions from the community, such as artifacts you can use in your portfolio. We'll also be discussing how to convince stakeholders to let you do your job, and we'll also explore how to incorporate research into the early stages of product development. So some riveting questions. But first, we got some programming notes. Hey, we have some stuff, I guess, here that I will read out. Episode 3 of Safe and Effective is out now, so please go listen to that if you can. You have a long weekend to do so. So I would appreciate that. Heidi would appreciate that. It's a great episode. Encourage y'all to go listen to it. Wherever you're at right now, if you want to leave us a review, that'd be really nice of you. And we'd be eternally grateful. And you know what? If you want to become a Patreon member too, you can do that and influence the show. So we can always talk about that later. But Barry, I have to know what's going on over at 1202.
Well, 1202, we talked about the differences and the balances between academia and industry. We're in an interview with Dr. Mark Young. Mark is the current president-elect of the Chartered Institute of Economics and Human Factors, but he's recently, after a number of years in industry, he's moved back into academia. And so therefore I take the time to ask him what's the difference and what do we think the different drivers are for both sides, and how do we get to understand each other better. So as usual, probably well worth, rather than me trying to explain it, you're going to have a listen, find out what you think, and hit me up with it with your comments afterwards.
Yeah, really give it to him. I really want you to give him the hard questions. All right, let's get into the news. That's right. This is the part of the show all about human factors news. Barry, what is our story this week?
So this week we talked about the Twitter X dilemma. Trust as a finite resource in UX. So a recent article titled "The Twitter X Dilemma: Trust as a finite resource in UX" highlighted the importance of trust in user experience. Trust is sacred because it plays a vital role in how users perceive and interact with a product or a platform like Twitter or X. When users trust a platform, they are more than likely to engage with it and rely on it as a source of information. On the other hand, when trust is eroded, users may become hesitant to use the platform or view the information provided with skepticism. This article emphasizes the need for proper design and ethical practices to build and maintain trust. It breaks it down into a hierarchy of trust-building elements, including user control, transparency, ease of use, consistency, and accessibility. Conversely, lack of control, lack of transparency, and an unfriendly interface can erode trust. As practitioners in the field of human factors, it's crucial for us to understand the impact of trust on user experience and design products and systems that prioritize trust-building elements. This article also highlights the importance of human-centric design and the role of practitioners in enhancing user trust through thoughtful design choices and ethical practices. So, Kate, taking all that into account, what are your thoughts on the wonderful way X is evolving?
Okay. Well, my initial reaction is it's a real shame. So I have used Twitter since it first started. I mean, I remember getting it. I was, 2013, something like that. And it's all the tweets are still there. I haven't deleted them. So if you go back enough, it's really embarrassing. And no, please don't though, but it is embarrassing. But I also now use it a lot for my work. And I spent ages like curating my followers and getting a good group of people. And I always enjoy my feed. And I also use it to recruit lots of participants for our PhD work. Really, really useful. And then suddenly one morning I woke up and it was an X and I didn't know what was going on. And I would like to say before I start on, I don't hate or dislike Elon Musk because I know a lot of people do. I do think SpaceX is great. I think what he's done there and with Tesla is fantastic. And he is clearly quite smart because he did the PayPal as well. But the guy should not be allowed to tweet or X is what it's called. You sent X's? Is that it? I don't know. And I also wouldn't like to put my finances on a everything app. But anyway, my biggest problem I have with it is just the fact that he just took over Twitter and suddenly changed it into a platform he wanted to develop and create, instead of kind of going the right way and starting from scratch, using his influence to get people to join in with this app. And I think that's what reduced my trust, and I think it will probably be the same for a lot of people. I think the minute he starts changing it into this everything app, it will just drop off. I genuinely do believe that he would have had a lot more people trusting his work and what he's doing if he had started from scratch. But he wasn't very transparent about it. And you can see that he only tweeted once or something about it, and I didn't know about it until I read the article. But we and other human factors people do understand that this is important, that we have to get the users to trust what we make and what we create. But as we've all probably found, people don't agree or they don't know. And I think that might be what the problem is here. But what do you think, Nick?
This is a really interesting piece to me for a variety of reasons. And I think the one thing that I'm going to question the sort of premise of this article here is that users' trust is being eroded. I don't know if that's necessarily true without the bird getting changed to an X. I think what's happening behind the scenes is much more sinister than what's happening at surface value. So my first initial thoughts is, you see this platform is changing radically. We're pretty plugged in people. And so we kind of understand the changes that are happening from reinstating banned users' accounts from people who were proliferating lies and hostile language towards others. And so for that reason, it's already a platform that is questionable for reinstating those people. But if you don't follow those people, if those people don't show up in your circles, then does it matter? Well, people that you follow might see that stuff and they might echo some of that. And so from that perspective, it can be impacted. But I think at face value, when you talk about users' trust, I don't know if it's necessarily eroded. I don't know if they see as much difference behind this as people plugged in like we see it. Because the other thing that is sort of the bigger questionable thing, we had a whole episode on this, is the verification status. So now you can be paid to be verified. And previously this was held for like public officials, like celebrities that were verified accounts or anything like that. Some reason that you as a public figure might need to be verified on that platform. Thus, I trust that that is, an actual account that is saying the things that are representing that brand, that person, that whatever. And I think that is ultimately, I think the thesis is that maybe the users aren't, the trust that the users are giving to this platform is not being eroded. But all these changes behind the scenes are taking advantage of that trust. And I think that's sort of where I want to focus on from my perspective. But Barry, I'm curious what you're thinking about all this.
So I think, okay, let's get the apology out the way. I'm going to try and call it X, but I'm not. I'm going to call it Twitter. So that's a sorry, not sorry type of thing. I think this might be 2 or 3 episodes worth of content here. There's so many different ways we can go. So, are we just going to spend an hour laying into Elon Musk himself about what he's done to an iconic brand? Because there's a lot of personal behavior and elements here that we could just go and just do that. But perhaps can we be a bit more professional, perhaps maybe a bit more systematic and do a fully reference human factors based roast of Elon Musk, because that might be better. I think it's really legitimate, and I think what we should possibly do is explore the brand of Twitter, because what it was and what it is, it's a pioneer. It absolutely was a pioneer. We take it for granted now, but when it first started out, there was not really many platforms doing what it did. There was platforms that came before, like MySpace and things like that were pioneered the social networking element, and obviously Facebook is a big player in that. But Twitter very much came and did it was the short form, it was the short, sharp, focused messaging, and then it had to build tools as it went, as problems were found. So the ability to block, lock up accounts, lock messages, private accounts, blocking people out. The user base was growing and diverse and didn't really know what it was targeting. And it's managed to evolve into a current, what is the best non-offensive term, is a chaotic situation that we have at the moment. And I mean, another good thing, which is just bewildering, is the taking away accounts of long-time users. There's been long-time users there that, because Elon wanted somebody else to have a particular account handle, that they just took it away from this long-time user who had it since Twitter's inception, and is now. And they said, "Oh, by the way, we're taking that away from you, but actually, you can have this other one instead." Or you had to pick from these 5, and apparently 3 out of the 5 were other people's accounts as well that they were just going to shove along. It was like that was mad. But when you think of that from a business perspective, all these people who maybe had businesses or podcasts or something already named, and you print your literature with your Twitter handle on it. Anything that's now printed with a Twitter logo on it now is defunct anyway. Thanks for that. I'm gonna have to get all our stuff redone. It's the reliance and where it stands in society now. It's more than just a simple business endeavor. It is part of a fabric. I mean, you have films they've got it as a centerpiece. Chef being a brilliant example, brilliant film. So rather than me ranting on, should we do this whole slightly more systematic viewpoint, do we think? Where would we like to start? Nick, where would you like to go?
Oh man, that's my question for you all. I like there's a lot of places that we can go, but I think we start at the surface value and then we get deep, because we can start just at the whole mismanagement around what the heck do we call this thing? Because we're referring to it as Twitter, as X. And the fact that we don't know how to refer to this thing is already just a big, like you were saying before in the pre-show, that we were that you saw this like cracked icon on your screen and weren't quite sure what it was, right? I mean, I'd been keeping up, so I kind of knew what it was. It was in the same place as my Twitter app, so I figured, okay, there it is. And I got a heads up on it a couple days before my app icon actually changed. I still refer to it as Twitter. It is Twitter. But I don't understand the need to change it. And if there was a change, then why not do it slowly over time? And it feels like all these changes, these drastic changes in some cases, are being not staggered out, and that is eroding trust. Well, my trust anyway, from the get-go. And so like it doesn't matter who's heading this. It's just that Elon's the dumbass doing it, and that like it doesn't matter who's doing it. It's just a bunch of poor decisions, and I think those poor decisions are widely agreed by everybody, that these are bad decisions being made on the platform. It doesn't take a genius to understand that these changes are not good. And I think this is an interesting thing that we can bring up too, is that the trust aspect is getting mainstream attention right now, that human factors practitioners, UX folks can jump on and say, look, trust is important. Look at Twitter, look at X, whatever it is, look at it, because this is what's happening. Trust is being eroded, or people are noticing things that are going to, over time, have a larger impact on that platform. And people have been saying it's slowly being killed. Fine. There's still a lot of users on it. Is it the thing that it wants to be? Probably not. Will it be? I don't know. The way that the employees are treated behind the scenes is an entirely different thing, but the fact that no one wants to work on this thing either is just the whole thing is really poorly mismanaged. So surface value, then dig down. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Sounds good. I would like to know though, did he have focus groups before this? Was he like, he sat people in a room, was like, if I just rebranded slowly, would that be better? Or should I just do a quick, sharp Elon way? Because I don't know, I would like to know these things. Like, and that might just be me. That might just be the fact that that's like what interests me, but like just a wee bit of understanding of what he's thought and why he thought this was a good idea.
I think he might have sat in front of a mirror and done that. But I think wind it back slightly, because I think there's a bit of context that's probably important to the conversation around where the state of Twitter was when Elon took over. Because you're right around the people management and all that sort of stuff, but Twitter was not a profit-making enterprise. It was spiraling debt. And so there was a need for radical change, which is why I believe, they pursued Elon, and Elon was very open to doing the takeover, because he thought he could make something better out of it. He thought he could rescue it or whatever. Then there was the whole bit around the valuation and that sort of stuff. So when he finally took over, we knew, or I guess anybody who's seen what he's done to other things, that there was always going to be radical change, and he had to do or as far as he saw it, there's the whole silly fiery hire process where he seemed to just slash everybody and then retain a couple of interns at the to keep the thing from completely falling down. Obviously, there's a lot more people employed than that. So something had to happen. Something had to do that, and it seems to have been that the key people he got rid of were the ones who were pulling that platform together. And then I think, Kate, you made a really good point around his, the ulterior motive that perhaps nobody saw, that he's had this desire to generate this one app that does everything, as we like to call it, Facebook. This app that controls everything from your life, and this is his mechanism for doing that. And I have to agree with what you said around, was that just cheating? Well, does he see this as a legitimate stepping stone? The other viewpoint that there's been expressed out now, that actually he just wants to see the whole thing burn, because it's been such a negative experience, whereas he's had with SpaceX, with PayPal, with his other ventures, with Tesla, he's been largely lauded as a savior. He's literally going places that nobody's ever gone before, which he thought, I would guess he thought he could then bring into social media, and boy, has he got that one wrong. I think it's worth exploring why itself Twitter's such a phenomenon. What is it around it? So I guess there's some elements here around, up until the point of Twitter in particular, everybody's had their news presented to them by a third party. So you've had newspapers, you've had news channels, all that sort of stuff. Your knowledge about what's going on in the world is curated by other people and fed to you through papers, through only one or two different mediums. Whereas with Twitter coming online, people could talk direct to an audience. Is that now something we just take for granted, do you think, Kate?
Yeah, I think so. I think we like being able to see the news quickly. I always think about COVID and Twitter. I know I don't want to bring up COVID because that was a long time ago, but it was when it was, especially here in the UK, you'd have that 6 o'clock. Someone would come on, some politician would come and tell you what the plan is, whether we're still locked down, how much longer we're going to be locked down, and you would go straight to Twitter. I would anyway, and you'd watch it on the TV, but you'd also be having like all these people's like thoughts on it, other politicians, other experts, and they would be tweeting about it. And Nicola Sturgeon up here in Scotland would be tweeting at the same time, being like, actually we're going to go do complete opposite, but you would know about it and like immediately. And I think that's something really useful. And you'd also get other people's reactions, and you'd have a bit of a, oh, they shouldn't still be locking us down. And you'd be like, oh yeah, everybody else thinks that as well, so at least I'm not alone. You'd have that sense of like community, like immediately, rather than waiting to talk to your neighbor the next day. So I do think we take that for granted these days. I don't know. I just think I'd rather he was trying to make it burn now than make his own app, though. Like,
I think that there's a really interesting element that you're bringing up here, and that's sort of the confirmation bias that we all experience when we use social media, and the fact that it's built into these information sources now that if something's trending on Twitter, you can see that, oh, this is newsworthy based on strictly the number of people talking about it. In your region or your country, your area, whatever it is that they're using behind the scenes for that algorithm. It varies by social media platform. But the interesting thing there is that you can see a lot of different opinions and false opinions and factual information about something very quickly, and pick and choose which ones of those things you want to pay attention to and confirm your bias by either blocking the people that you don't agree with or giving some sort of interaction to the things that you do agree with. And there's like a whole metagame about how to correctly ratio things on the platform, right? So like they say screenshot your enemies and retweet your friends or whatever it is, because if you screenshot, then that original thing doesn't get proliferated in the same way. And so there's all these strategies being employed, and this is not unique to Twitter, the misinformation, the bubbles, the echo chambers. But it is an interesting thing to think about that his goal has been to sort of make this a free speech app that is, everybody's there. So you have people like politicians who are spouting lies on the platform getting reinstated when they had a very good reason to be taken off the platform, especially in politicians' cases, because they are presumably they should be trusted people that are in elected office. And so the fact that we're going back on that, and that, I mean, there's the whole conversation of, do we deserve that? Because then if we've elected them, then we've dug our own grave in some ways, but then not everybody elected them. They're representative of a part of the world, right? And so that's ultimately it's so tricky. It's so tricky to think about because there's just a million different ways in which you can go about this. But I think the interesting thing about the confirmation bias is when you start to see all these different opinions about something, you're only paying attention to the ones that resonate with you. And so you're right. There's no longer and I hate this term, both sides approach towards looking at the news when it comes to social media sites, because you are getting it fast and by a lot of different sources. A lot of times things will not be confirmed as fact as they get out there. And so you'll see this like misinformation. And so there's already a whole bunch of issues with trust, and the fact that there's a lot more things going on behind the scenes rather than just an app icon change that are actually happening to undermine that trust. Or I shouldn't say undermine, because really it's take advantage of, I think.
So I guess the biggest thing for me that you highlighted there was the speed, because in the grand scheme of things, we've always had people playing fast and loose with the truth through media. I mean, just look at the different newspapers that you get. Look at the different news channels. I mean, America is a great example where you've got so many news organizations, and some you can get two very different interpretations of an event that is broadcast through a number of different channels. So really, it's what has always been a problem is understanding whether Twitter itself is a publisher, or is it just a vehicle? Because actually, all these different people are mini publishers in a way, and that's governments have struggled with that view. So we've had to deal with that. But it's, I guess, looking at some of the things that we've had to learn because of social media. So we talk about some of the mechanisms that are perhaps being rolled back. I mean, just the need to block people. You know, you don't walk down the street or go into a pub or a sports thing and sort of say, right, you go and stand over there. I'm not talking to you because I just don't want to see you in my social bubble.
But you
I
would
might
if you could, right? You would if you could.
I turn my
That'll
back
be
on them. I wouldn't
coming.
Yeah.
Just think of Black Mirror, then it'll happen.
Yeah. But the need to block people suddenly got very serious because they could be there in your feed with the same level of attention from yourself as good people. So we're not just talking about just people you just don't dislike, though that might be there, but it could be trolls. It could be more serious. It could be like stalkers, domestic perpetrators of domestic violence, coercive control. It's a massive vehicle for that because of that type of thing. Bullying. And we're not just talking about children, but adults too, you know. And so they've had to bring in these tools of like blocking. And this is where, again, we're now losing trust because Elon is now talking about taking that away. So the ability to block people, the ability to curate your own bubble, is perhaps one of the strongest mechanisms you can have in there for your own personal safety, your personal physical and mental health. And they're on about throwing that away just because he can, just because it's on his own private whim that he doesn't think we should be blocking.
I hadn't realised he was blocking that. Who's blocking?
Well, and the
removing that block option.
Somebody else was commenting on him blocking that, but they couldn't pull him in directly because he'd already blocked them. So anyway. But then, so there's things like that. We mentioned verification earlier as well. Now, verification, I thought, is a really interesting thing because historically, verification through Twitter was, yes, it was free, but it was also very hyper selective. You could apply for verification, and if they didn't think you were worthy, they'd just say no, we won't bother. And so you'd have some people who would get verified and go with that, but then you'd have other people who they maybe either just didn't apply for it or would apply for it and get turned down, like me. Not that I'm bitter, but you get turned down for verification. Now, I think personally, verification is a very good thing, because it shows that you are who you say you are. So when they come up with the paid verification, I was like, well, actually, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. What I didn't like was them turning around and saying, well, actually, what you're paying for is the tick. What you're paying for is the blue badge. We're not actually verifying you as such, really. You could still scam it through, and you could still have a name that doesn't mean anything, etc., etc. So yeah, that's where they've ruined it by bad implementation.
Yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to what you said about publication, whether it's publication or someone is just saying something. If you had the blue tick, it could be seen as publication because you knew it was coming from a proper source. Like, you could take what a politician was saying as seriously as you can take what politicians say seriously, because you know that they were actually the politician rather than just some randomer pretending to be them. But now it's like you can't trust anything unless you know them.
I will jump in here too. Like, we actually had a whole discussion about this when the verification system just came out too. Hard to believe that was 9 months ago. Wow. That episode is from December 1st, 2022. So almost 10 months ago. So, I mean, I'm going to plug it at the end, but we had a whole conversation about the verification system, but there's been so many more changes to the platform since then. And you're right. Like the whole idea of who owns these check marks and who is presenting the information goes against what we would expect historically from journalistic integrity, which, hang on, I Googled it. I mean, look, it's to seek truth and report it. And now even truth is being questioned. This includes fact-checking, not intentionally distorting information, identifying sources, avoiding stereotypes, and supporting the open exchange of opinions. I think that last piece is being taken to the extreme there in some cases with some of these journalistic outlets, entertainment outlets that pass as journalism. But I think that's really important to consider, because now you're getting all these hot takes from everybody, including podcasts like our own, where we are giving our own thoughts on this matter, but from our own perspective. And that is what makes some of this thing that is social media nice is because you actually have voices out there who come from different perspectives or perspectives that align with yours. Like if you wanted to hear a human factors take on Twitter and you wanted to listen to that whole conversation, you could listen to this podcast. And, you know, you can argue whether or not the things that we're talking about here are truly human factors. I believe that anything that interacts with the human is. We might get a little bit more philosophical at times, but I think, you know, that's our background. That is where we're coming from. And so our thoughts are likely to align with people who are watching or viewing this program. And so when you have that same thing that's happening from other types of dimensions, either political beliefs, spiritual beliefs, anything else like that, where socioeconomical background, there's a lot of different ways in which you can slice and dice people and their demographics, and having factual information being presented in a way that is truthful and honest and not intentionally distorting information, where whose sources are identified, avoiding stereotypes, all that stuff. It's really important. And that's kind of the key to trust here. When you are presenting something as factual, when you haven't done all these things, then that's a problem.
It's interesting. So it linked with that, there's a couple of concepts and a couple of other concepts that came up around the use of, particularly around Twitter, because of the speed that it happened, that we now take for granted. So viral messaging. So a message that goes viral, you know, that just wasn't a thing before this. Whereas then there's now been so much research into this idea of, what was initially called a viral maven. So who was that trusted individual that if you got your news from them, that actually they were, that was a credible source. So that's where we got the idea of like sort of celebrity influencers, and then just people then becoming influencers. But that whole piece now, people are now making a lot of money of just being an influencer, rather than being, you know, so that's just another way of curating news. That if this one person says it, that they don't have journalistic training or anything like that, but they are a decent source.
TikTok is a joy.
TikTok is great. Anyway,
on next week's episode.
But then, so this whole thing of virality has then been taken steps further because it's so open to subversion, and this is where, yes, we've mentioned about a certain very senior politician, but actually that's not the only politician to get involved in this sort of shizzle. All politicians are now trained in the art of social media and how to do it, and there's positive comms around that, but there's also election games as well. There's various, it used to be, if you retweeted somebody, you were just retweeting somebody. Now you're actually retweeting positive, negative. You can like things, but there's only one way of liking it. So you might be just marking it for future reference, but actually that's you liking it, and that can get you into trouble. And that's even before we get into state actors playing with it. So let's, throw it out there, Russian elections. That's all done through this medium. And so if we're on about banning one politician for having dubious views, what about, how do we, is the problem so widespread that actually Twitter, X going down the pan might be the best thing that could happen to democracy?
Could be.
But it's also, I guess, my final bit on here would be the use of social media to deliver soft persuasion, soft power, has changed the way that nation states spend money. So whereas a lot of, let's say, poorer states who wouldn't be able to afford your traditional 6th generation multifaceted fighter jet, your tanks that do XYZ, they'll pour it into cyber and cyber influence, cyber messaging through primarily these type of platforms and this type of platform. So has all that money now been wasted, et cetera, et cetera? So I think there's a whole mechanism here that Twitter started and or certainly was very strongly in developing, that's made us really think differently If Twitter was to crash and burn, then where would we go next for trusted news? Because I think now we do trust our sources on Twitter because you curate them, as Kate you mentioned at the start. You curated your listener, your followership. I'll quite frankly, anybody can follow me. I don't care. I just like to see the numbers. But again, that's the way that some of the younger people sort of take it now. So I like to know how many followers they've got. Comparing follower numbers at school on these different platforms.
We used to do that. Not so much now, but we did used to look at our followers. Yeah. Oh, it's an interesting one. I always go back to this bias thing. I think like confirmation bias and also like bias that you didn't know you had. So like even today I was looking on X, see I got it right. And all this Prince Harry stuff came up, and we all know how controversial Prince Harry is. And I was looking through all this stuff, and I was like, oh, Prince Harry. I did not have an opinion on him before. I did, but like not on that day. But just that sort of stuff, that kind of bias that's brought to us without us even like really thinking about it. And like without us even wanting that, because I was getting really angry at Prince Harry, and I'm like, why? He's just living his life. Like it might be, yeah. I won't get into him. But like I was just like this whole opinion was brought on by these couple of like Princess Diana, Prince Harry tweets, and I didn't have that before, and that just like riled me up for the day. And that's just a different level of trust. Like I don't know, it's something other than confirmation bias that comes from being on Twitter. No, sorry, X.
X, you almost got it right. I think there's from a human factors perspective, UX perspective, there's other things going on here, right? Other than like confirmation bias. There's this whole when you think about trust and things like cognitive load, where you are constantly evaluating whether or not these things that you see on the platform are true or bullshit, and you're trying to figure out all the time, is this truth? Is this not? Is this something I agree with? Is this not? There's a lot more cognitive load when you come to it from that perspective. And then when you think about even the interaction methods, the controls and displays from a human factors perspective, when you think about it from that, like if you think about actions on that platform and how they have predictable outcomes, somebody says something I don't like, I go to the ellipses and hit block user. When I go to that ellipses and no longer see block user, I'm thinking, what happened? What did I do? It is eroding my trust in my ability to do the thing when they've just flat out removed that. And so if it undergoes these like changes without any communication, they might, the end users ultimately might feel like they're less in control over things. And control is a huge aspect of trust when it comes down to it, because the more control you're perceived to have, the more trust you have in a system. So like you can see this in like automated vehicle literature, automated systems for aircraft, anything like that. The more in control the operator feels, they're more likely to trust that system. So I think that's kind of my final thoughts. I want to do one more round just in case anyone had any last nails in the coffin for Elon. Barry, we'll start with you.
Branding's terrible. I think the fact that he's gone, that there was a whole ecosystem almost, a whole vocabulary around you. You tweeted, you read tweets, you were on Twitter, all this sort of stuff was all set up, and the way that he tried to generate it by saying, you're on X, you are Xing, and I can't even remember the rest of it. It just makes people now unsure about what it is they're actually doing. They've taken, some activities that people were used to doing, tried to reformat them, and it's now made people apologetic for not knowing quite how to get it right. And it's making you feel like you're the one who is wrong, and therefore eroding the fundamental trust in not so much the platform, but your use of the platform, which is then just a natural line for you to then take a step back, say, well, I'm not doing it properly. I can't trust myself to do this properly. Therefore, I'm not going to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my final thing. Kate, what about you? What's your final nail in Elon's coffin?
Again, just reiterate, branding is terrible. But I was thinking, like, through these conversations, I don't know why he didn't do something similar to what Meta did with Facebook. You put it under a brand that's new, but you keep it the same. Because no one, I mean, Facebook used to be Facebook and then was Meta, wasn't it? I feel like that was the right way. But then he changed that, but he kept the Facebook name. So I'm not sure whether that would have been a better way of doing it, and then making people get used to the idea that Twitter is no longer Twitter, but part of this larger X thing. I don't know whether that would have been a better way. And maybe that would have come up if he had done any sort of testing before he did all this. But my final thought is that we'll probably just end up using LinkedIn now. Yay.
Cautionary tale. All right, next week, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Facebook. No, I do want to highlight this one tweet, X, whatever you want to call it, as a reaction, because I thought it was just spot on, and this is what I'll end with. Tweets should now be called 2 cents, now that is what the X brand is worth. All right, with that, we'll be... I just want to thank... let's see here. Who are we thinking today? Tell I'm not prepared. Thank you to our patrons and everyone for selecting the topic, and thank you to our friends over at UX Collective for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, we do post links to the original articles on our weekly roundups in our blog. You can also join us in our Discord for more discussion on these stories and much more. If you want to be in charge of the news, you can always visit us on Patreon. Anyone can vote in those polls. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to see what's going on in the Human Factors community right after this. Are you tired of boring lectures and textbooks on human factors and UX? Well, grab your headphones and get ready for a wild ride with the Human Factors Minute podcast. Each minute is like a mini crash course packed with valuable insights and information on various organizations, conferences, usability methods, theories, models, certifications, tools, and much more. We'll take you on a journey through the fascinating world of human factors, from the ancient history to the latest trends and developments. Listen in as we explore the field and discover new ways to enhance the user experience. From the Think Aloud protocol to the critical incident technique, focus groups, iterative design, we'll make sure that you're the smartest person in the room. Tune in on the 10th, the 20th, and the last day of every month for a new and interesting tidbit related to human factors. Don't miss out on the Human Factors Minute podcast, your ultimate source for all things human factors.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our monthly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and access to the full library of Human Factors Minute, a weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes. Huge thank you as always to our patrons. We especially want to thank our Human Factors Cast All Access and VIP patrons, Michelle Tripp, Neil Gainey. You guys truly make this show something that we can do every week. Hey, did you all know that we have a Discord that you can join in? You can get involved talking with other human factors professionals from all over the world, get access to some of the resources we got our hands on over the last couple of years. There's a bunch of different discussions going on in there. I'm kind of on a detox right now from social, but hey, if you tag me, I'm there. You can chat with others in the live voice channels, and you know, it's how we do a lot of stuff over there. So if you want to, go post your questions, chat with others, and it's a good community. But why don't we go ahead and switch gears in getting into this next part of the show we simply call...
It came from...
That's right. It's the part of the show where we get bad questions from Reddit. This is where if you find any of the answers to this, we'll give us a like. I don't know. Since we're talking about tweets and X's and just and all the socials, that really helps the algorithms, right? there's a little button down there. Just give us a like. All right, we have 3 up tonight. This first one's from the UX Research subreddit. This is by Lususu. What kinds of artifacts and information is safe to include in a portfolio? They write, what types of artifacts can I safely include in my portfolio? How do you usually maintain your public portfolios? Can I share things like qualitative insights, churn numbers, diagrams, designs? Or should I remove my company name and edit screenshots? How do you manage? This is a lot of questions. This is meant to be one question. Any examples? I don't know. Kate, do you have any thoughts on sharing things publicly?
Yeah. Firstly, Artifacts makes me think of Outer Wilds, the game. If you've not played it, play it. Just my little plug. Portfolio. I've never had a portfolio because academia. So I'm coming from an outside perspective, but I feel like getting people's approvals on you putting stuff is always important, whether it's clients or your work. I feel like that would be an important thing to do. My idea and something that I would probably do is work up your own version. So you might have made something for a client or whatever, and you like the design, but you could work up your own version that kind of takes elements of that and be like, this is an example of the type of work that I have done, rather than having to go through all the permission stuff in case you have a boss that isn't particularly happy with you doing that sort of stuff. But as I said, never really had a portfolio, so I'll hand over to Barry and see whether he can add anything else.
I'm going to say what Kate said, because I've never really had to have a portfolio either. Given that most of my work is defense related, then yeah, kind of down on that sort of thing. That's not necessarily strictly true. So there's fundamentally ask permission. This is where you ask permission rather than seek forgiveness later on, because if you've done work for a client and you want to show it off, so we do this quite often now, that if we run some trials or we get media or we do whatever, we ask the clients if they're happy for us to share the fact that we've been engaged with them, if we can share the media that we've used. So we ran some trials recently where I put some of the pictures out on LinkedIn. Couldn't put any of the actual product that we were testing on there because of confidentiality reasons, but they were happy for us to do the wider thing. That was much better approach than me chucking it out there than them firing us at mid-job. And this is a kind of same thing. If you've done some work, either ask them if they can do it in the entirety, or if they want to protect their either certain elements of the design because of for proprietary reasons, or just their name, logo, and things like that. You can blur this sort of stuff out. You can block it. You can make scrub versions. So working up that type of thing works, but fundamentally, ask permission. Most people will, if you've done a decent job, most people will say yes, because it's a inadvertent advertising for them as well. Except for proprietary stuff or things that are for reasons of national security. Nick, what about you? Have you got any other bold insights into this?
Yeah, there's interesting drawbacks to this, right? So there's 2 approaches that I might take. If you have a public record of something that you've worked on, that's public record, I feel it's like completely within your right to point to that website, point to that product, and say, I've worked on this. And say I've worked on these elements of it because it is public. Check your NDAs, but I think, for the most part, you should be good to point at that thing and say, I worked on that. The specific process related stuff is kind of what, at least from my perspective, is a little bit more important rather than like the design of things. When it comes to a portfolio piece, I'm much more looking at how does somebody think about things? How do they approach problems? That's a lot easier to get around than something like a design portfolio. But if you need to show something that is a work in progress that might not be cleared, absolutely ask for permission. I think what you both said is right. Get that permission first. And if you can't get permission, scrub as much of it as you can. And if at the end of scrubbing that thing, if it is not necessarily the same, if it doesn't carry that same impact, then don't show it. That's sort of the drawback that you get with the scrubbing piece. Although there was a story on Reddit one time of somebody who worked on an adult website, and instead of putting thumbnails of all the videos, they put pictures of cats, and so it was a cat video website. So there's that. You can always replace the data.
It's true.
All right, next question. How do you convince stakeholders to let you do your job? This is a vent by Clumsy Magic Girl 101 on the UX Research subreddit. They write, this is much longer, but we truncated it. How do I convince stakeholders to let me do my job effectively as a UX research freelancer for a mental health startup? They have provided a lengthy and overwhelming recruitment email for a 4-week study, but I believe it should be concise and not reveal all the study details up front. I'm unsure if they want advice on the user research or just want me to follow their instructions completely. What do you all think of this? Kate, I'm going to go to you first.
I'm just laughing at the show notes. I think ask them initially, and if they are funny about it and they don't really know, I would probably write up my own version of what I think is right, or at least bullet point it for them, being like, I think you should include this, this, and this, and then take it back to them and be like, this looks nicer. This is much easier for people to read. It's a 4-week research project. Like, quick, to the point. And then be like, if someone is interested in like having the job or anything, you can always send over those extra long notes to them. And then like, at least that person is interested and isn't just scared off by a really lengthy description. But that's what I would do. I don't know about you, Barry.
So, because you're going into this as a freelance, then if you're doing a short-term piece of work, you've got to come to an evaluation there. Is it worth? Is the juice worth a squeeze? Because you either just, for that bit of work, you crack on, do the job, and get on to the next one, or you do what I do, because I like to make sure that we are promoting what we do, particularly in an HF world. Shout at them loudly, tell them how great you are. But fundamentally, part of our job is putting across why we do what we do and why we provide value. So the value here is that if they're providing a recruitment email that is too much, rewrite it for them, show them the example of what it could be and why you would do that. Put that in front of them and say, look, this is what I would do. You've hired me as a freelancer to come and do this. And help you do this. This is the value I'm adding, and this is why, and this is the improvement it will get you. That's all you can do, really. You can lead the horse to water. They have to drink the Kool-Aid. If they still turn around after your best advice and say, actually, we want to do it the way we've done it, no, that's their choice. Let them get on with it. They're going to pay you, and crack on to the next job. Nick, what about you? Have you got a nugget information here that would solve all of the problems?
Yes, you put a smiley face in your emoji, and I put claps in mine. Do your job. Had to offset it for the audio. Look, here's the thing. There's 2 approaches to this. I am going to take this job, and I'm going to do this job at a short term. And rather than get into a fight, let's get a good relationship going and continue that work. And that might be a time to push back after you've gotten secured longer term research contract. That's one way of viewing it. The other way of viewing it is kind of a mix of what you said, Barry, is like do the work, but also push back and say, look, these are the reasons why X, Y, and Z is a better approach. Let's work collaboratively on this together, so that way you can understand the human factors, the UX piece of it coming forward. If they don't listen to that, just do your job. Just do your job. Like, you don't want to burn bridges. You don't want to ruin relationships by pushing too hard and making sure that they never hire you again. So that's kind of where I feel is like, push back, do your job. But then if they say, no, do your job, then you do your job. See how that's show notes. It says do your job.
Do the job.
Okay, last question here. How do you all do discovery research that actually influences product level decisions before work heads off to design and we're left with validation? This is by Robo Paula on the UX Research subreddit. They write, how can I incorporate research into the early stages of product development to influence decisions before design work starts? Who has successfully done this? All right, Kate.
I have. Well, no, kind of. As much as a PhD student can. I did this for my fieldwork phase, where I went and took an interview schedule to people who work in critical care and asked them what they would need to be able to use the AI. And I got some really useful stuff and some stuff that really showed me what has to be done. And that's a lot before you can actually use it, but all useful stuff. And I think there's a lot of approaches you can use for this, like requirement analysis, workflow analysis, so you understand how the project will fit in with what they're doing currently. And there is a lot of articles out there on this, so I didn't snatch this idea out of the world and claim it as mine. I did look at the research. So I think getting people on board is really difficult, but the best way about going about it is building a case for it. So finding articles, examples, and writing that up. You could even add in good and bad examples. So for example, this person didn't do a user requirement analysis, and look how crap the project is, or like the end goal. But this person did, and look how great it is, and they didn't have any problems or anything. And then what you do is you write it up in some sort of case study, or you make a nice presentation, sit everybody down and be like, this is what you should do. We are doing this from now on. We can have a discussion about it, but this is what's happening and this is why. That's what I would do and have kind of done in the past. But I'll let Barry add in from a more, industry side.
I go back to my earlier example, what she said. I think it is that lead by example piece. It's that lead the horses to the water. Because if you can show them where the value is, show them why you do what you do. What I tend to do now when we go with new clients is we go along with the process and say, right, this is the process. You are going to get the whole process. The first part of that process is effectively the discovery phase. And we call it something slightly different, but it's effectively the same thing. And in that, it's important because we are coming to your business, your organization, your product. We know nothing about it. We know an awful lot about human factors. We know an awful lot about different domains, but specifically your organization and the particular instance that you're wanting to employ us in, you're the expert in that, not me. So we need to learn about that in order to do it. And part of that is going to be internal, part of that's going to be external, part of that is going to be out with the literature. And it's important because if we get that right, and then I will generally throw in for every dollar you spend at this phase saves $100 down the line as well, because that tends to go down well with people who hold the money. But you've got to show them value. And if you can show them value, brilliant. I've worked a bunch of jobs where you haven't been able to do that, and you're effectively along for the ride. And it's not only difficult, but it's heart-wrenching. When you could be doing really, really good things, yet the product is just going to go to market anyway, or it's going to do whatever it's going to do. So if you can lead by example, great. And it's the best thing that you can do, and keep fighting for that. Nick, what's your perspective?
Oh, it's so clear that both of you have never worked at a company with like limited to emergent UX maturity. So here's the thing: is like there are different stages of UX maturity at a lot of different companies, and some are very user-driven companies that incorporate user research at every stage along the way, including discovery. There are other companies that have an absent level of user consideration, where they are just building something and just do it. That UX is ignored, not existent, all that stuff. You can look up the stages of UX maturity, but ultimately, I think the way that you should approach this is trying to get to that next step of UX maturity by proving, I guess, in so many ways that UX is effective. And once you start to even get to that point of where they start to understand that UX is an effective way to change the product, you can then say, look, like if we were involved earlier on in the process, we can reduce the risk of building the wrong thing by investigating way earlier on, so that way we don't spend all this time and resource into the wrong thing. And it all does come back to that ROI. If you can say, we're going to build the wrong thing and invest all this time and money into our employees to build this thing, then that no one's going to use, that's an incredible stat that you can point to. And you don't even need to necessarily have the exact numbers. Ballpark numbers will do it. And that's another really compelling argument. Okay. With that said, let's get into this last part of the show. It's just called One More Thing. Barry, what is your one more thing this week?
Well, last week I highlighted that we'd moved into our new offices. Today, I got this thing about feature walls, and you've got to have a wall that we've got this one large meeting room where we've painted one of the walls blue. So I can now put the logo on the wall and it will look effective. And whilst we've been working in this office now for the past week or so, now that we've got that done, it now feels like home. So, my business home anyway. So I was very pleased by that. So this weekend he's going to be putting the logo on the wall and then getting some bits of wiring in. But it now feels like that's a room we can go and use and proudly show off. So yeah, it's amazing what a little bit of a paint can do. Kate, what about you? What's your one more thing?
Well, last time I was on this, I was telling you about the slugs and how you can use beer. But I thought I'd get the other side of it, that my artichokes are ready for harvest. Artichokes are funny looking things, but I looked out this morning and it has to be the size of a golf ball. So they are right now. So the weekend or maybe tomorrow evening's plan, or maybe while I procrastinate tomorrow, will be to go in and cut the artichokes and preserve them and make those kind of oily artichoke hearts that you put on pizza. So I'm just very excited about my artichokes being ready for harvest. Love my garden. Anyway, Nick, what's yours?
So in a rare instance, I haven't actually wrote anything down in the show notes, and that's for a very, I guess, personal reason. That I'm burned out on a lot of things. I don't find a lot of joy in a lot of the things that I used to do. And I don't want to end this on a super bummer note. I guess it's more of a call for how do you snap out of it? Or what have you done as a listener that has snapped you out of that thing or has rekindled a spark in your life? And I don't want anybody to worry about me. I'm fine. It's just that, we were talking about this before the show where very tequila, talking about this before the show where the whole AI buzz came around and I was really excited about it, incorporated a lot of it into our workflow. And there's some personal markers for me with respect to the podcast and where we're at and what we should be doing for the next couple of months, especially since there's a high profile event coming up that I have just not felt the need or spark to even start on all that. Anyway, lots of burnout with everything. And so I guess it's more of a question. How do you reignite the spark for the things that you lost passion for? That's the wrong word for it. It's just are feeling burnout from. I don't know. That's it. And again, I don't mean to stress you all out or end on a bad note, but that's it for today, everyone. If you like this episode and enjoy some of the discussion about Elon Musk having a much worse day than I am, I'll encourage you all to go listen to episode 265, Why Twitter's New Verification System is a Total Disaster. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week. For more in-depth discussion, like I said earlier, you can always join us on our Discord community. Visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest human factors news. If you like what you hear and feel so inclined to support the show, there's 3 things that you can do right now. 1, you can leave us a 5-star review wherever you're watching or listening. That really helps the show. 2, you can tell your friends about us. That's how we grow, and that's how more people find the show and support us in their own way. Or 3, if you have the financial means to and you want to support us financially, you can do that too. Over at Patreon, we're always giving back to those folks more than everybody else. They are part of a privileged class of folks that support the show, and we give back to them because of that. As always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. Kate, Preston, thank you for coming back on the show. We didn't scare you away last time. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about artichokes?
Only artichokes. Twitter or, X. That's where people go. Unless you want to add me on LinkedIn, it's X, unfortunately. So yeah, go to Twitter. That's where I'm at. I think it's Kate Preston 96 or something like that.
Excellent. Barry, Kirby, thank you for being on the show. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about painting on the walls?
If you want to see my wonderful painting job that I supervise, other people painting the wall, Kate, not getting back into that conversation. If you want to go and find out about that, then find me on X or Twitter, Baz_K, or around other social media profiles, But if you want to come and listen to me have discussions with awesome people in the HF community about what they do, what inspires them and gets them going, then come to 1202 the Human Factors Podcast, which is 1202podcast.com.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. If you want to talk to me about Star Wars, parenting, burnout, mental health, neurodivergence, AI, whatever it is, I'm across our Discord and across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning into Human Factors Cast. Until next time, it depends. Stick around for the post show. Let's go. Music. There we go. All right.
That was really low. Yeah, okay. That went really quickly. Oh, now your audio's gone really squiggly.
Oh, it always happens. I don't know why. It's always right after the show ends, and the music comes in, the audio chops, and I notice it every time.
Maybe the stream feels like we do, where you just finish and you go,
Yeah.
Drink the water.
No,
Or tequila.
Well, that's true. My daughter's going back to university tomorrow, and she's stolen the tequila and the Captain Morgan's rum off the shelf. And you're like, now I don't like it. I've never even drank Captain Morgan's rum. I don't know whether I like that or not. But there's occasions where a tequila does sort of hit the right spot.
Yeah, I used to do that. To be fair,
were you a sort of tequila sunrise person, or were you a salt lemon lime?
Salt lemon lime.
Yeah, that's what
yeah. And then there is my poor father doesn't really know this, but I have told him, but I've told him in subtle ways. I used to drink his tequila and also his really nice whiskey. Sorry, Dad. And I used to fill up with water, and I feel terrible. Like
you filled his bottles of whiskey up with what? Oh, that's sacrilege.
And he was like, I told him this, and he was like, I hope he didn't fill it up with water. And I'm like, no. He hoped I stole it and just left it. And I'm like, no, of course not. Poor Dad. Don't do that anymore now. I've just go and buy my own.
Nick, do you steal other people's alcohol and fill it up with water or other spirits?
I'm so boring. I've been medicated for close to 2 years, and a lot of the medication I take alcohol interferes with it. So like, I don't drink necessarily anymore. I'm also a parent now, and so of a young toddler, I don't want to be be a parent that is either absent or in more ways than one. So, I don't want to set the bad example either. So I'm almost 2 years sober. And then, the whole COVID thing, I didn't really drink too much through COVID because I'm a social drinker. In fact,
I drank a lot during COVID.
I'm a social drinker too. I get on with myself very well.
Like, if you want to hear a funny story about me drinking, there's and this is one of the last funny stories I can tell because it was just, it's the one that I do like to tell. So, it was. I'm not going to say which year it was. Longtime listeners of the show probably know, and I'm not going to say which interview it was, or interviews plural it was. Because I've gone back and listened to that interview multiple times, and I'm like, there's no way. So let me tell you the story. So Blake and I went out networking one night at HFES. And by networking, I mean getting completely hammered. And we had interviews lined up like the next morning at like 8 a.m. And I'm not going to say which coast. So it was at 8 a.m. and we were back in the hotel at like 4. And we had drank a lot. And so we actually somehow managed to get through the interview completely unscathed. And I don't know if they could tell. If they did, they were very professional about it. And it's just one of those stories that I'm just like, we walk back to the hotel at 4 a.m. going, oh my, we have an interview in 4 hours. How are we gonna? I don't.
I've had that problem. Conferences, not the Human Factors one, but another one. Got very, very drunk at.
Very quickly done. No, I like that.
Networking.
Not that one. No, I got very, very drunk and I managed to vomit everywhere. It's great. I know, I'm such a professional, I know. And then I had to go to the conference the next day, and it was bad. But it wasn't the Human Factors conference. I was good then. It's a good level of drunk.
No, this year's Human Factors conference, I wasn't completely sober, but actually I didn't drink anywhere near as much as I usually do because they'd obviously put me on introductions for keynotes on both mornings, and so I was like, okay, I've actually got to get up, and I've got to get up and be responsible. So and vaguely coherent. I mean, I'm not coherent at the best of times, so I mean, trying to then do that. And so actually, I think both nights, I think I'd went to bed at like 10:30, 11 easily both nights.
That's
I
good.
really, considering it was only a couple of years earlier, and the person shall remain nameless, but if you know, you know. I was drinking with a friend who I hadn't seen in a while at conference, and we drank a lot, and I think we did see 4 and 5 o'clock, but went to bed for a half hour or whatever it was, got up in the morning and carried on through the day. That was fine. And because I'd already presented, so that was all fine and all that sort of jazz. My friend, this was on the last day of the conference, they came to try and clean his room, and he was still in bed. They had to get him out, put him in his car, or in the company car, to sleep. They literally had put the back seats and the thing down for that person to sleep. And we didn't see them for the for the rest of it. They had a great time though. They didn't really remember that much of what was going on. It's the sort of person that when you look and you go, yeah, that wasn't me. That's brilliant. I had a great time. It wasn't that bad.
Well, that's the thing, because I was volunteering at the conference. I was like, I can't get too drunk. I'll get drunk enough to do karaoke, but that's as far as I'll go. And I was fine. Because I had to be responsible as well the next day. Next year, though, not going to be doing that. Yep.
Hey, you know what time it is?
It's time to preview next week's story.
It is.
You just spent all the time doing that, didn't you?
What?
You just spent all the time getting that ready, didn't you?
No. Nuh-uh. Yes. No. So if you all want to be a part of this show that we put on here and want to choose what we talk about next week, have some agency in the programming, there is a little QR code, not to be confused with an X or a tweet or anything that we talked about today. There's a QR code on the screen, and that will lead you to thank you, whoever scanned it. That will lead you to this week's news, where you can choose from this week's story. We usually preview these in the post show, so that way you all can be aware of what we could potentially talk about next time on the show. And right now it looks like there are 4 votes, and they're split between 2 stories. But we'll go through all of them because we like to do that here. So the stories, from in no particular order. New neurotechnology is blurring the lines around mental privacy, but are new human rights the answer? Okay. How sure is sure? Incorporating human error into machine learning. And then the next story here, new model reduces bias and enhances trust in AI decision-making and knowledge organization. And then the last piece is delightful and frustrating UX in video games.
The UX in video games, I'd have a lot to talk about that. Lots to talk about that.
Oh, you're swaying our listeners.
Well, I literally can't do it next week either, so don't choose that one. Choose that another time when I can come, because I have a lot to say about how crap video games are sometimes.
Yeah, no, in that case, we're going to need you along if we are doing that one, because I don't really play video games.
Yeah.
I certainly a lot of the platforms, so PlayStation, stuff like that, we've got them, just don't use them.
Well, I don't play them. That's it. I watch Harry play them. That, like,
how is that a thing? So he plays the game, you watch him playing the game.
Yeah.
Is that what
Great
books
fun? Well, I don't know. There's just some games. Some of them, like Fortnite. No, let me go to sleep. Like seriously, the worst thing ever. But there's some games like Outer Wilds and Subnautica. I will sit and watch that all day. So good. So yeah, no, I don't play them, but like I have a lot to say, and I know all the stuff in the world, like all the drama, and
That's fair enough.
yeah,
Now,
like
Minecraft I can get behind.
I'll play Minecraft. Yeah.
I'll send you the link to the server. We have a
You
server.
have a server.
Just so I'm on it, Joe's on it, Joe. So have I shared that in the lab?
No.
I haven't.
No, I could hop on right now.
Meant to share it in the lab. Hold on. I can't find that up while we're.
Yeah.
But I will do that.
Well, look, here's the thing: you don't need like a lot of experience playing video games. That's the thing. It's like this is a conversation about UX in video games and how there's like an interesting balance between making something challenging intentionally and rewarding the user. And so it's this like really careful balance between making something that's frustrating, but not frustrating enough that somebody gives up. And so it's like writing that line that is so delicate. And they provide some examples in the article, which is pretty good. So that's one of the stories. I don't want to sway anybody one way or another.
I do.
Okay. Which one are you leaning towards, Barry?
So the how sure is sure incorporating human error into machine learning, I think that will be dull, because we'll just have another.
And of course, now Barry, we're gonna have like 3 votes on it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I know what I'm doing. The new model reduces bias and enhances trusted decision making. Again, really, from a technical perspective, it is like the human error one. Really, really equally interesting, but actually the outcome is, I think, not a really that interesting discussion.
You always say that, but then when those things get chosen, we always have the best discussions. So I just want to preface it with that too.
That's also true. The video games one, I'm really interested in and have been for a long time. Done a lot of work around gamification and stuff like that. So it does lend itself into that, about how we use video games in like serious gaming and things like that. So I quite like to leverage that around that. But I am really interested in neurotechnology and mental privacy. Again, takes us back to Musk and his idea of putting the Matrix style spike in the back of your head. How do we, because I'm still completely blown away by the idea that the way I think about things is not the way that Kate thinks about things, is not the way that Nick thinks about it. Or how do we know that we are thinking about things in the same way? So is it aphantasia where you can create the mental image in your head? So if you say, think of an apple, can you imagine that apple? Can you visualize that apple in your head? And when I said this to Amanda, she's like, "Yes, I can see. It's a bright red apple. It's got the drop of water just glistening down the edge. It's got the little bits of green coming out of it." And I was like, "That's great." I have no visual of that whatsoever. I can't imagine things in my head in that way, and I had no idea that existed until I saw it on social media. Somebody else said that was a thing, and I'm like, I see it as almost programming attributes. I know that there's an object called an apple, and it has characteristics, and I could describe them brilliantly, but I cannot see that in my head.
Do you want to do that exercise with a couple other words?
Go then.
Podcast. What is in your mind when you think about the word podcast?
I know it's an audio file, and it has sound in it.
You think of it as an audio file. I'm not saying that's wrong. That's exactly what it is.
No, it's a box with some data in it. Yeah, that's how I represent it, I think. Why? How do you see that then?
Well, I'm going to ask Kate first. Kate, how do you see a podcast?
Well, I see it as like listening. So I always listen to podcasts in the car when I'm driving. So that's what I see is slightly longer car journeys, like my normal commute where I stick on a podcast. That's what I see.
when I think about the concept of a podcast, I think about the artwork, the show artwork, and I think about like all the stacked tiles on my app. That's what comes to mind when I think about podcast, like the visual representation of a podcast on my app. Yeah,
that's all very different things, though.
It is, which lends itself to Barry's points that everything's really. Yeah, that'd be a really interesting discussion. That neurotech thing. I'm gonna refresh here to see what the votes are at right now. So, you say it, Barry, and they show up. The neurotech is actually ahead. It's number 1 right now. We have How Sure is Sure, which is the one that Barry didn't want to do, and the frustrating UX in video games are tied for second place. And then with 2 votes each. And then the last one coming in here is the reducing bias, enhancing trust in AI decision making. Anyone can vote. You just need a Patreon account. You don't need to be a Patreon. You just need an account to vote on it. And voting closes Monday nights. I guess your Tuesday morning.
Yes. And then at some point, considering that I suggested this idea, I should really try and be pushing for social thoughts, because I've been lacking on that front. Sorry, to go back to this neuro, and if we do end up talking about this, it'll be brilliant, because the other thing that I find really interesting, and it fits with another theory that I have, is when I'm designing stuff. So I love doing HCI design. I love designing interfaces for particularly around things like embedded HCI, so for like cockpits and safety critical systems, things like that. When it's right, I know it's right, but I have no picture in my head of what I'm trying to achieve.
What do you mean by that? When it's right, you know it's right, but you have no idea in your head what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, so I've got no preconceived picture in my head about what I'm trying to design on.
Is this like you know when it's art and you know when it's something else?
I don't know. I don't know how best to describe it, but I know that when I've got an interface that ticks all of my boxes, and that's not just the requirement boxes, but it's something that I know will function, I know will work, and I think it's a good thing, and it will be received well. I know when that happens, but I don't know what it looks like before that happens, if that makes sense.
Got it.
It probably doesn't, but yeah, because I know when I've spoken to other people who do design work, they have an image in their head about what they think it should look like, and therefore try and steer it towards that point. And I take a much more atomic view to the way I do design. So yeah, I just find it interesting. It's almost like there is a ironic light bulb moment for something I can't see, considering I can't imagine the light bulb. But yes, I just know it's there.
Yeah. That's interesting, because I'm definitely visual. Like, I can think of it, and like that's what it has to be. Then I try and get there. I don't know the specifics though. Just know.
But this is, I mean, when you sort of then get into this piece around, so say you get the brain chip, and everybody can read your thoughts. I mean, we just don't have a single stream of consciousness. You have things firing off it. I mean, if somebody was to tap into my head and get my stream of consciousness, geez, poor person. The sort of things that you think about randomly firing whilst you're doing stuff, or you get distracted and all this sort of stuff. I mean, how do you interpret? I mean, what language do you actually think in when you're not talking or verbalizing it? You know, what does that even look like? Sorry, but yeah.
And this is why I listen to music all the time, so I don't have this long stream of thoughts. Oh, that's interesting though.
Yeah, so vote for that one, because I really want to dive into that one. I think it'll be fun.
All right.
Not that I'm trying to bias anybody, but yeah, I totally am.
If I'm honest, I can't believe I'm still awake, so I'm doing well.
Speaking of, so you both brought up TikTok earlier.
Oh yeah.
And speaking of games, this is something that keeps coming up in my feed. That like I'm not a person that watches other people play games. They have to be very select games. I don't like. They have to be very It has to be an art form.
Okay.
I don't play Call of Duty, but there's apparently a mode in Call of Duty where you like hide as a prop, and I think this is in
Yes,
Fortnite,
love
too.
that game.
Prop hunt.
Yeah, that's fun. I
And,
play that one.
And that's
the only
and
one I'll play.
That's the only one that I'll watch on TikTok. It comes up, and it's always the same. And like, oh, this is what I got. All right, cool. And then we got to like find the place to hide. And it's. I think the reason I enjoy those videos so much is because they play off human psychology. You are using principles of Gestalt and environmental trickery to essentially hide yourself and camouflage yourself in this environment. And it's really fantastic. The ones that I've been watching, there's obviously like the cheese wins where they like go off the side of the map and just like hide there, and no one finds them. But the ones that are more creative are the ones that are using props as part of larger things. So where it's like, does that thing belong there? It's not like, I guess the example I would use is like you would have a prop of like a blue barrel. And so one way of approaching that is you might go and hide by a couple other blue barrels. So that way you blend into the other blue barrels. There was one that I saw where he was a drill press and actually hid next to this big silo. And it looked like he clipped into the silo just a little bit. So it looked like the drill press was like a tap coming out of the silo and into the ground. And it was just it was a fantastic play because you're like, it was using the prop in a creative way that made it look like it was part of the environment. And it was something that no one was looking for. They were looking for known props like a drill press. And so when they went and were looking for them, they couldn't find them. So I don't know. It was just really good. There's other moments like that where like you see like a tree branch or like a branch that's on the ground and they can like kind of clip into a tree and make it look like a root.
Yep.
So like
it's really good.
It's something that I kind of like want to play. I don't play Call of Duty, but I kind of want to play that.
That's the only bit of Call of Duty I'll play, and also I can hear the Minecraft noises, Barry.
I can too. I wasn't going to call him out for it.
Like, what are you doing? But no, prop hunt's great. I like getting the most awkward object and trying to hide that one. That was a game that we had where we all had to get the most like awkward object and then win, and we did. It was great fun.
I would love to host like a Human Factors Cast gaming night. That'd be awesome. Whether it's like Jackbox games or something that our audience can participate in. That might be kind of fun.
How does that work?
So Jackbox is so basically what you do is you put up a screen and it'll have like there's a bunch of different types of games, but the core concept is that it hijacks your phone, so that way you are like logged in through the browser on your phone as a control device for this game. So I could like bring up a screen share here with Jackbox and we'd all be able to do our own inputs, right? So if we played something like Quiplash, let's do like a Fibbage. Fibbage is a good example. So it will give you a prompt and say like, here are 4 answers. One of them is true to a question. And our objective would be to put in an answer that would trick the other players into selecting that answer over the true answer. We don't know what anybody else has said. And so like, let's say you could be like, what color is the sky? And this is a very basic question, but like I might say indigo and Barry might say light blue and Kate might say dark blue. And the correct answer might just be blue. But let's say I'm more inclined to pick dark blue, then whoever put that in would get points. So that's kind of the premise. And it gets really fun, especially with trivia things. There are other games, but the other fun piece about it is that as you put it up, people who are watching can play along too. So they can all try to stump us with things or depending on the game and the mode. But that might be kind of fun to do like in a 24-hour stream for charity or something where we're, getting a bunch of Human Factors folks on at, various hours to do Jackbox games, or just switch through games. We could do a prop hunt or a Minecraft or whatever.
That'd be
Cool.
fun. I like that.
Yeah, because we haven't done what's the longest stream we've done so far now? 10 hours.
10
hours. Yeah. So we need to bust that one.
Is it 11?
11, 10, 11. It was a long time. That was, yeah. This cabin didn't smell that great afterwards. Anyway.
Oh, it is time. On that note, thanks, Barry. We're gonna get out of here.
Oh.
We'll be back presumably next week to talk about one of these stories. Go here once again. I'll put up the QR code so you can all scan that thing. Yeah, we'll be back next week. Presumably, we might not. We might not. Who knows? We're just tentative dates now. That's how we roll. And that's it. I got nothing else. Bye. Any other notes for the people?
I'm good.
Okay.
See you next time.
All right. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Are you tired of boring lectures and textbooks on human factors and UX? Well, grab your headphones and get ready for a wild ride with the Human Factors Minute podcast. Each minute is like a mini crash course packed with valuable insights and information on various organizations, conferences, usability methods, theories, models, certifications, tools, and much more. We'll take you on a journey through the fascinating world of human factors, from the ancient history to the latest trends and developments. Listen in as we explore the field and discover new ways to enhance the user experience. From the Think Aloud protocol to the critical incident technique, focus groups, iterative design, we'll make sure that you're the smartest person in the room. Tune in on the 10th, the 20th, and the last day of every month for a new and interesting tidbit related to human factors. Don't miss out on the Human Factors Minute podcast, your ultimate source for all things human factors.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our monthly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and access to the full library of Human Factors Minute, a weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.